Let's move on then. On this story, where Free State Department of Agriculture has cautioned farmers to be vigilant when they are buying livestock following the foot and mouth disease outbreak. Let's get more on this story then. We're joined via Zoom by Dr Kristan Mojapelo, who is the Director for Veterinary Services. A very good afternoon to you, Doctor, and thanks so much for joining us here on SABC News.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the time.
You're most welcome. So let's talk about, the identification of this particular outbreak and how it was really identified.
Yes, I think we will recall 2 weeks ago there was a media statement that was issued by the National Office notifying the country of an outbreak in the Northwest Province. So when the Northwest Province was doing a backward and forward traceability of the animals that actually were involved in those transactions, they identified that there were animals that were sent to the Free State Province. We were then notified by the Northwest Province that, you know what, there are 2 consignments that have come to the Free State, and we followed up those 2 consignments. There are 2 groups of animals that went to 2 farms. There is 120 calves that went to a farm in Viljoenskroon, and then there is a second consignment of 3 animals that were bought from an auction that also went to a separate farm in the same town of Viljoenskroon. So we have visited those 2 farms since the notification, and we have done our investigations. We have collected samples, sent them to the lab, and yesterday afternoon we got confirmation that the 1 farm where 3 animals were bought from an auction actually tested positive for foot and mouth disease.
Let's continue then. We were talking about, how this process was done in terms of investigating those suspicions of foot and mouth, but also just a secondary part of that question. What brought about those suspicions that you had in the first place?
I said we were notified by our colleagues in the Northwest Province following their outbreak. And I said when they were doing their back and forward traceability, when they went to the farm where this outbreak started, they were able to find out that there are some animals that were moved from that farm to other farms, and it was because of this notification from the Northwest Province that we then went to the 2 farms to investigate what was happening on those 2 farms.
Yeah, and of course you talk about those 2 farms confirming the suspicions of foot and mouth. Are we likely to see a situation that this does indeed then spread to other farms? And I suppose that is the concern, and I'm assuming not all farms would be affected at this time, but it could become a large-scale problem.
Not when the appropriate control measures have been put in place. Part of our investigation of the problem, those 2 farms that were identified as being possibly infected have subsequently been placed under quarantine, which means the animals on those farms will not be allowed to be moved out of those farms, and no new animals will be introduced to those farms. But as an additional measure, we have then said that this disease is not a disease that isolates itself on a farm. If there is a neighbor who also owns animals, there is a likelihood that at the fence that separates these 2 farms, if there is contact between the 2 heads, there is possibility that the disease can also spread. So we have then requested that the animals on infected farms should be moved to the center of the farm as a measure of trying to avoid contact with the neighbors. But then in those areas where there are these 2 suspected farms, we have also placed the neighboring farms under precautionary quarantine, which means we are saying by virtue of you being the neighbor of this farmer, there is a likelihood, because in other countries this virus is also spread by the wind, but it depends on different environmental conditions for that to happen. So the neighboring farms have also been placed under precautionary suspension, or they have been placed under, so they will not be allowed to move animals. So the likelihood of the disease spreading beyond these two farms is very little. If we get the full cooperation of the farmers, then there shouldn't be a problem. So far, the two farmers have been cooperating very well with the department, and we are confident that we are going to come out with this outbreak only being isolated to this one farm.
Yeah, and you know, when you're asking other farmers to be on the lookout, I mean, I'd assume that a person who's been farming for a long time would know exactly what to look out for when it comes to foot and mouth disease. But for the sake of our viewers and laymen who don't know much about farming, what are we telling these farmers in particular to be looking out for when we're worried about foot and mouth disease? I mean, I suppose these are some of the control measures that you speak of that you have put in place.
Yeah, foot and mouth disease is a viral disease that is feared by the whole world as a disease that no one wants to get. So I think the advice we are giving farmers is that it has come to our attention that there are people moving animals around, and there are people using auctions as a place to dispose of animals with problems. And we are saying if people are going to continue participating in auctions, they need to just be extra cautious about the animals they are buying, that they are able to know the health status of these animals, and that they know the owner, and that they are buying from reputable owners. Now, we have also said our farmers have moved away from the general principles of bringing animals onto a farm. If I own 1,000 or 2,000 animals, if I go and buy 100 animals from elsewhere, I think it is very important that those animals are put on a separate camp for at least 21 days or 28 days, that you just observe if these animals that you have bought are not bringing a problem to your farm before you mix them with other animals. I think that is the second advice we have given. And I think most importantly, we have also asked the farmers that, they should rather trade animals with their friends or people they know, as opposed to going to these auctions. We understand that the auction people also want to run their businesses, but I think there's something that still needs to be looked into in terms of how these auctions are being run, because not everybody comes with clear history of where their animals are coming from, what they have been tested for, and if they are able to certify if these animals are free of certain diseases. So I think that is the three advices that we are giving to our farmers in the Free State Province.
Dr. Mojapelo, thank you so very much for giving us your time here on SABC News, sir. Many thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.